Greetings to you, dear friends. My name is still Puzanov Sergeyev, so you are watching Fedor Fishev TV today. What is this? Guys, what is this anyway? This is actually a legal thing. The form simply gets a second wind. The final comparative test will take place in video format. For those who don't understand what we're talking about, visit my V-Contacta page. Read the same name, There are 2 written comparative reviews. That is, how did the first part go in what location, under what conditions, and the second part they were in different conditions, at different distances, with different feeders. And accordingly, today will be the final one, as promised in written reports. I will try to demonstrate today. How do these forms work? Oh, on the cast. What a time it was. Then what weights? In essence, the forms will perform one in the same distance, one in the same volume, one in the same weight. Let's see which of these forms will show itself to be softer, faster, more accurate. And accordingly, we will finish this format of comparative testing. I think it will be interesting. For me, it will be the same. Some kind of discovery, in fact. We will work as they say, depending on the situation. Let's try to set the distance as it is. 2 forms in height 3 and 9. We will supply 50 workers, and we will throw different feeders at this distance. Different tests, different weights, so I can say that the coils are installed identically. This is V2 Series 5500. The cords are the same, everything is the same. The only thing that will be the only difference, this is about the ship when we will watch this. On the Osella form, which in the Method series goes the top, 1.5 Muchi. On the blank feedered Pro Elegance in 2, there is a tip of 2 ounces. For those who doesn't understand what I'm talking about, why am I clarifying this? So that you understand tip in cast. In fact, it doesn't seem to participate. That is, it does not help the form to be thrown further. Closer there is the only thing that can affect the line descent there. But in the feeder, in this format, it is practically insignificant symptotic. Because in spinning, yes, of course, it will have a big impact with light primates and so on, and we even have the lightest feeders, which we put on forms. I remind you of 110 and 120 grams. Well, probably 50 grams is the minimum, so it won't affect anything much. Let's watch. Well, let's run through it. So to speak, in terms of design and fittings, visually the 2 handles are absolutely identical. Cool, flattened shape, which rests on the hand. It's convenient to wind in, relieve some load. This is the only thing. In the butt part, slightly different handle shape. That is, at the donkey, so slightly flattened. I would say it is more convenient for long-distance casting. In the series, into such a handle it seems that it is shortened. In fact, there are 2 forms absolutely identical in height. For long-distance casting, the grip is probably more comfortable. Here, there is a slight difference in diameter, practically unnoticeable. Further small, a piece of cork, insert. Here there is already a coil holder. And I can say that its ergonomics are much more comfortable to grip than on version 2. Roughly speaking, he is so thin at the withers. Well, it's an absolute fact that ergonomics, this pen is much better than in Series 2 respectively. Here comes the neoprene bed. That is, here the transition is almost instantaneous. You immediately stay there in the winter time as if, for the cold part, here is plastic and also a neoprene insert. The grip is not so comfortable. He's just smooth. But in essence I wouldn't say that it's uncomfortable, it's comfortable. But in comparison, we have a comparative test today. Still a coil holder. On a goal, it wins in terms of ergonomics. There is a cool counter nut here, a slightly elongated format accordingly. The handles here are shortened, and accordingly there is such a difference. Next we pay attention for 2 fillings absolutely identical. The forms are absolutely similar. Here's where some difference appears. On Sally, there are angled rings. A completely different form. In episode 2, it's also cob-shaped, but in some older version. All these rings are rings jumping. That is, not some kind of Chinese desperate rings. Everything is absolutely cool. The forms are not their super saving budget. These are average and above average forms. The map of rings matches absolutely. The tops match. Absolutely, for one small nuance, the outer rings almost identical in diameter. If you look closely, maybe visually barely they're one size. Further, the tops differ in that the rings in episode 2 continue to be large, while I think from the vertical it will be clearly visible on the tulip, while on Elegance is Ella in the Method series. The tulip is quite small and thin. It is not clear why if this stick is positioned as a method. In comparison, it will look like this. The inner diameter seems to be dancing somewhere around the size. Definitely in 2 it's bigger. And the cellus is much smaller. For classic feeder, use of this form there on Distant Frontiers, on Work Shuck Leaders. In the second series, he is already a clear leader. Let's remove the marker. 80 grams. And we'll put up such a classic cage. In such a dough, there would be 60 grams. 60 grams, in my opinion, 7 cells times 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells. 7 cells, 60 grams, I think, together. With the volume here, it will be around 90 grams for sure. The first form that will fly will be the Oslo Fighter. Up to 110 grams, also called Method Series. I want to remind you once again that the subscription method series does not mean that, which is not suitable for classic fedora catching of goods. He's just positioning himself. Your own system for catching and working with large fish. I'm filling the feeding trough quite tightly. There may even be 35 milliliters. Fits in probably a few grams more precisely. That's why I think that. Well, there is definitely something under 90 here. I will make several casts with each form. Trial. The rises showed, which is not very convenient here. Trees are in the way, so I apologize in advance. I spent a long time choosing the location and still chose one that wasn't very convenient, but we looked and it seems like the work of the form will be visible there. So a Seo feeder 390 to 110. We made 2 casts. The next 1 and 2 is exactly the same feeder. We are refastened with the same volume of food. We don't add anything, just so you can see the difference. Let's get started. Between us, remove the feeder from our father. And our next one is in 2. The chords are absolutely identical. For those who count there, that this will be really important. My task is not to show how much the form in general can throw the maximum amount there. How much can it be overloaded? My task is to show the difference between the 2 constructions. Let's go. Second grip is already like this. It feels like this. I think for people with big hands, it will be very convenient. I don't mean to say that it's uncomfortable or comfortable, but the difference is when you shift the sticks. Of course, a specific comparative test is still done. This is not just a review of one form. This is a cool thing. Well, let's go 50 meters at 2. Well, what do I think? Visually, you still managed to catch my eye. And for those who don't really understand this, understand what's on in 2. And the structure is exactly the upper third blank. Much softer. This is most likely due to the fact that the form is still designed for fishing in a classic feeder, and a trophy fish is about 1 kilogram. Maybe there's 1.5 maybe even 2 of course, and 3 and 4 I'm just joking. Well, most often it's 1.5 to 2 kilograms, bream there, and so on. You can also catch small carp, but here the fight will be in favor of the carp. Acela has the upper one, as you can see. Some are a little angrier, a little bit angrier, on casting and accuracy. That Acela is a little bit anyway, somehow more directly at the expense of your top third. 2 Elegant and, well, there is a little bit of a spread at a distance of 50, but it is within the acceptable limits. Yes, if you really want to find fault, then he is present. He is present, that is, the distance there is 70. I think there will be a noticeable spread. That is, again, yes, this classic one is like a feeder sport casting. If you just aim there, I think it's quite possible to throw evenly, but it is clear that the upper third in B2 is much softer. Here, of course, it's more evil and quicker. That is, again, returning to the report. Fighting on some river edges there. On rises and so on with the hole, it will definitely be better. At 2 here, it will already be losing. When the feeder is heavy, you will just have to try through. We'll cross the eyebrow, here settled with its upper third part. We'll simply start to turn from growth, 3 and 9 in some 3 and 3. But at best 3 and 6, that is, the upper third has already simply straightened out under tension, and accordingly your form is already shortened. It will be more difficult to jump over the edge. I'll have to get up, but on some more or less convenient terrain. In 2 by tactile sensations on laying out fish, it's simple. Top gun for me is, I don't know, it's very important, it's a prerogative, because I select forms. In order to enjoy fishing, you must understand it yourself, that we choose forms not for fish. The fish doesn't care what brand. And you use the system. And here are the tactile sensations of fish landing in 2. This is just an undisputed winner in this mini battle. This is 100%, but the throwing qualities. The fight with eyebrows is for now settled well okay. That we all run according to some standard tests. That is, in essence, we have now run through his average test. Blanca settled and Blanca in 2. The Elegance brand generally positions itself that there is no sense. There are no forms in the overload. Yes, they can allow it. But again, within the limits of the permissible That is, if you take the maximum lead. The stated tests, you stuff another 40 of food there. Yes, he will survive. Yes, he will quit, but how long this will continue is unknown. Can't guarantee it somehow. This whole epic, therefore, strong overloads definitely not necessary, especially for a form in 2. There the carbon is much more highly modulus in. Jokes with him are bad enough. So we've gone through the main tests. That is, according to his work, let's now grab something more serious. This is such a backyard feeder. Dough and weight 60 grams. With a volume of about 50 milliliters. such a specific feeding trough the size of a fist, times 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there will also be a load in the 7th cell. That is, it is a fairly large, massive feeder, and you yourself understand that the test is 60. And feed. This is when the feed is 50 milliliters and the feeder is 60. It's a kind of a commensurate test when you have to invest in the form properly, so that the feeder can fly normally. Because the volume to weight ratio is now 50-50, when the volume of the feeder is 50 milliliters, I'll lead 30. You have to invest to deliver this volume. Yes, this volume has weight, but it also resists on casting. Distance 50 is such a distance, which in the feeder M is already considered far. That is, all the boundaries there are 70, 80 is some kind of limitless, but they exist in sports all for ordinary people and 99%. For fishermen, this distance is already considered long, so we are now checking everything in full. This form with this volume is just a feeding trough. So she settled down. The first 2 casts settled further and 2 drove. Now I think you have seen it now. On such a volume with such a weight, that the village form still holds its position. He felt the load, but the bottom part of the form was not included. And here you can compare on rewind. Settle down first throws. Yes, the blank floor is included and maybe even a little lower. At the moment when the whole thing turns on in 2, the form has almost bent to the handle. This once again underlines its more noodle-like softer structure. For those who may not have considered this, now we'll give it full throttle, as they say. First, as always, the donkey will fly. This is a feeding trough. 80 G per lead. Times 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, probably 6 and 7 cargo because, well, so normal. The same 7 cells are more elongated. That is, on lead, we are already in the working test. Even more than. Because there. For a donkey, it's 110 test. That is, in essence, we need to add 20 milligrams. Bait, this will be his top test. Here accordingly now it will be somewhere around 35, probably 40 milliliters. Bait plus it's quite wet. That is, we will raise the test for any reason, and now we'll see what will happen to this form. For me too, it will be revelation. I'll be with you now too, Then when we film the cast, because slow motion still shows how the form opens up completely. So from the side, visually, with such a swing, not everything is quite visible. From my experience it shows that this form will start to turn on, but in fact, oh my knee. With reel holder. In this form it most likely won't be included at all, because when fighting carp it is very important, so that the form does not curl up to the handle, otherwise with carp it is not you who enters it but it rolls you. Well, let's see. First 2 throws by Siva. 390. The coolest stick so far. So far everything suits me under certain conditions. Food, no dirt. And empty feeders in the dough. This is when they throw empty feeders. Well, I don't know for whom, for what, and so on. Because with food there is a completely different resistance. Well, I can really feel it right now. The form is really loaded so much. Because in the previous version, the feeding trough, when I switched to V2, I felt that I had loaded into V2. Now I feel like I've already settled down and loaded myself with such a test. Well, let's go and see. What is this? Guys, what is this anyway? This is actually a legal thing. I didn't even know. This is probably the 4th or 5th fishing trip with this rod. I didn't even know that at full load in a full test, the form simply gets a second wind. Men-O-T-Y-N. Oh, fuck them. Guys, what was that anyway? What the hell is this? What the hell is this? I don't know if it was visually visible or not, but it was just tactilely so bright. So fucking awesome. This is just crazy. I have already caught 5 to 6 fish with this form before. I have never felt anything like this. Only in a comparative test such tricks are revealed. I think you noticed in slow motion. Instead of 2 throws, there were 3. At the donkey. On the first throw, I think, what is this? Okay, second. Damn, it definitely wasn't my imagination. The Sella just got her second wind. 80 grams plus feed. Above is the test, and the most important nuance for a Sella, the test stated as 110. UV 2120, that is 120 grams, is definitely more there. Yes, I understand that this is a 10 grams fork. Maybe they don't mean anything there at all. Well, the villages just got their second wind. Such a clear and even cast. Considering that we overweighed there by at least 20 grams. Minimum simple. Such a clear throw. The second breath opened at the same amplitude. On the third cast I made it specially. Not much was invested. The Bulin just started shooting itself. Even more powerful than it was before. That is, we have already loaded it under its test, as mature as possible. I think that on this form it was necessary to write, not 110 but somewhere around 130. Because at 130 he just started throwing perfectly. He just got his second wind. He started shooting just like crap. It seemed on the feeding trough volume. In the test, there's almost 100,110 in his test. Yes, Blanc, quit. Yes, Blanc throws. Here, bang, the main knee just connects. And the blessing became simple. Catapult yourself. And this is some kind of super. What is this anyway? And the most important thing is that I went fishing 5 times. I caught it in different tests. I didn't understand or feel it. Now in comparative test. This feels fucking awesome. I think I'll just stop making reviews. I will only film such comparative tests. At 2, yes. Considering that it has 10 grams more test. But nevertheless, I think you'll see it in slow motion when lifting the form. You can already feel it, that it's really hard for him. That is, before the swing you start to pull the form. It's already loading. That is, for its entire third, it's already loading. Here it is practically not felt at all. Somewhere down here you already feel it, that you really loaded it up and you can already feel a slight overload. Good shoots, no questions. But the accuracy is already starting to limp quite badly. Says that the form is fulfilled. Their stated tests. The form is positioned as for catching white fish. That is, no big ones there and so on. Well, what's the bottom line? As a result, select or recommend one of these forms. I probably won't be able to anymore. Each form has its own 2 main trump cards. UV2 is an amazing feeling. Tactile fish landing. What is the first factor for us fishermen? The first and most important factor. This is when we drag this heavy feeder of different weights. Resists, there is no tactile sensation of fish at all. I think the embarrassed fishermen understand me. Well, and the second, no less important factor. This is the accuracy of the casting distance. When the form participates in it fully, if your hands are straight, the form is thrown for you. It's definitely settled. The fight with the eyebrows definitely settled into here, it gets lost. On overloads, volumes and so on. At 2 it starts to melt. I don't know which form to choose and which one to advise you. So I will definitely keep all 2 of them for myself, and you are my friends. As always, choose the gear you like, that you enjoy. Choose them according to fishing conditions. I say once again that the ideal bar does not exist. Conditions are different, hands are different, everyone must choose a plan for themselves. I hope I have given more or less detail told in this comparative test. What is this brand Elegance and what are these forms? In height 3 and 9, I think it was more than interesting, because I just got more energy. I think you noticed. Settled 3 and 9 definitely goes to the reserve team to me in sports. All friends, I was happy with you. Kuzanov Sergey comparative test forms Elegance. All the best!